This book is so fun to read.
Thanks.
When the first half of this book, I said, you know what? I want to quit my job and become a cocaine smuggler. It changed.
Yeah.
But would that be
By the end of the book, you had a whole different view on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, should I do that? Should I?
If you do it as well as they did it,
Yeah.
you could possibly create a whole era of cocaine that would last for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you'd be very popular, and you'd be the king of the hill.
Yeah.
And then it would all come crumbling down.
Yeah, and who's they? Who do you write about so well in here?
I write about a group that was called Los Muchachos. They were
Yeah.
led by a man named Willy Falcon, who
Yeah.
was a Cuban exile whose family had been chased out of Cuba at the time of the Cuban Revolution. And he came to the United States. In the 70s, he kind of was working construction, and then some members of the anti-Castro movement
Right.
came to him and said, we need some young guys who will partner with us on a plan we have to bring cocaine into the United States and to sell it in the United States and use the proceeds to buy guns and explosives for the Contras in Central America.
And Willie said, drugs are not my thing. Goodbye. End of the story.
He probably maybe wishes he had said that, but no, he said, I can do that. I mean, his main motivation was to get rid of Castro. I mean, that was that generation of Cubans woke up in the morning dreaming of a dead Fidel Castro. In fact, they woke up in the morning dreaming of strangling Fidel Castro to death with their own hands.
But in a way, doesn't that romanticize this a little bit? I mean, it's like, it's easy for Willie Falcon to say, it's okay that I'm doing all this because it has a good, I have credibility because I'm overthrowing this regime.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, it grew bigger than that for him.
Yeah, I think we refer to that as a false value system.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
he believed in it. He believed in it.
Yeah.
He believed in the cause.
Yeah.
And he was willing to do anything for the cause. And
Yeah.
so when they asked him to do this, he was all for it. Now, you got to remember, in the late 70s when this started, cocaine was only used by the very rich.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, rock stars and some professional athletes. Nobody else could afford it.
Right.
So the first thing they did was they made it affordable. They brought in so much quantity that they could lower the price and sell, and they started to sell it. And it was available at the working class level. Everyone was using it.
How much cocaine did you do to research this book?
Well, if you look at the cover of the book, they showed me the cover of the book. I said, could we make the cocaine embossed so it looks like a real line of cocaine? I think we'd sell more books that way.
Right. And they probably said, sell more books and then we'll emboss it. This book has 40 pages of reference notes.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is an entertaining read about cocaine smugglers and speedboat racing and sex and women and buying sheriffs to create airfields so they can fly in cocaine from Colombia. But you're telling me you actually researched this shit?
Hey, man, when I started this book, I thought I knew this era. Like a lot of people, I saw the movies, Scarface, Miami Vice. You know, this era existed in our culture. And I came to believe that a lot of that is not untrue, but sensationalized.
Sure.
There's a lot of stereotypes in the presentation of the cocaine era. For instance, this group did not use violence as part of their operation.
Yeah.
That was startling to me. I was even concerned. I was like, how do we tell a cocaine story without Uzi submachine guns and chainsaws?
It seems like their philosophy was you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. I mean, there's examples of people of people lying to them, and they actually don't use violence. If anything, they would call them in for a meeting and give them some money and say, we should be friends, right?
Well, you know what they would do? They would cut him out of the business.
Okay.
And Willie and his partner, Sal Magluta, Willie and Sal and Los Muchachos, that was the name of the organization, were so predominant in the cocaine business. If you got cut out of their operation, you were cut out of the business. They had the best product at the best price. And we're talking about Miami as a base, but what they were known for was their distribution system.
Right.
So bringing cocaine to LA, to San Francisco, to Chicago, to New York, they really created a system that touched off that entire era.
And you sat with Willie Falcon?
I sure did, yeah.
Once? Twice?
7 or 8 times.
Wow.
And then we communicate a lot through Zoom.
Is he still doing blow a lot of times, or what?
No. You know...
I kind of wondered that. It's like, he's doing blow, he's on speedboats, they're doing this, and then I'm like, then he goes to prison. I'm like, well, he's got to be addicted to cocaine at this point.
He was doing blow in prison, I'm sure.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the easiest places to get blow.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me, TJ.
Yeah.
Right? I've never been to prison. So you sat with Willie a bunch?
I sat with him a bunch,
wow.
yes. And wow. I traveled to the country that shall remain nameless, where he is.
Sure.
And it wasn't easy because we're in the middle of the COVID crisis, so flying in and out of the country was really difficult at the time. But it was really important. I knew I couldn't do the book unless I could take stock of him face to face as a person.
There's kind of a funny party vibe with cocaine. It's done at the club.
That's what I hear.
Right? And then, but then you say crack.
Crack.
And it changes quickly.
Oh, man.
And I wonder if Willie Falcon feels any remorse, or does he feel, I mean, the crack epidemic, you know, it's not a laughing matter. It's not cocaine isn't either, but does he feel any of this, or? Yeah,
the emergence of crack, which they had nothing to do with, was a phenomenon that was created kind of at the street level. Changed everything.
Yeah.
Up until then, you could say that the cocaine era was all parties and good times.
Yeah.
Crack was ugly. It was violent.
Yeah.
It brought it down to a street level and took all the fun out of it. Yes, all of a sudden, if you were a cocaine dealer...
God damn it, crack.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you had blood on your hands if you were a cocaine dealer.
I remember in 1989 watching George H.W. Bush.
Do blow?
Do blow. And that's when I said, it was in the White House. He did this press conference.
Did you ever tell anybody about that? Him doing blow in the White House?
You know what? It would help. Yeah, if there's a party that does blow, it's probably Republicans, to be honest with you. But he showed everybody this bag of crack. I was watching it with my father. I remember thinking, holy shit, drugs are bad. He says in this press conference that they bought this crack outside at the White House. Don't do drugs, Nancy Reagan, holy shit. Then I read your book. I find out that whole bought crack at the White House thing was
fake.
It was fake. In fact, the DEA said to a drug dealer, you got to sell us crack outside of the White House, and the drug dealer says, where the is the White House? I mean, this is all made up.
Right.
Let's talk about the American government's role in all this.
The war on drugs.
The war on drugs, and also helping fund the rebellion that started this whole thing.
Listen, this opened my eyes, and again, I thought I knew a lot about this era going into it. The ways in which cocaine was used as a political tool. Here's something that's interesting. Willie and Sal's main money launderer was a banker in Panama City known as Guillermo Endara. He was burying their billions and billions of dollars in bank accounts in Panama.
They would ship in drywall pallets, right? Down to Panama?
Yes.
I mean, I read this stuff and I'm like, this guy should be the head of Walmart or something. You know what I mean?
They're inventive, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
They basically were making it up as they went along. These are guys who are high school dropouts. I mean, it's ingenious. I find this in the criminal world quite often. Criminal organizations of people with very little formal education that construct these phenomenal criminal operations. If they had chosen legit form of business, they probably would have been really successful.
For sure,
Guillermo Endara, so they depose Manuel Noriega in Panama. The United States is done with him. He's no longer their buddy. They force him out. They bring him to the United States, put him away in prison. As the successor, you know who President Bush chooses to be president of Panama? Guillermo Endara. Willie and Sal's money launderer becomes the president of Panama.
And there's an interesting part in here where they get worried that they're not going to get their money from him. And he says, don't worry, I'm going to become president.
And they thought they were going to get their money, and they lost $400 million in those accounts.
Wow. The money, and then he ends up being in a cell next to Noriega, and they're kind of chatting to each other. And he was kind of like, Noriega's annoying. I don't want to talk to this guy.
Strange bedfellows.
You write so much about the criminal underworld. you know, some of your other books, The Westies, Havana Nocturne, Dangerous Rhythms, Born to Kill. It's about the bloodiest Asian gang, the Cuba mafia, the Irish mob. Just admit it. You want to be a criminal.
This is what keeps me from being a criminal.
It is.
Yes, absolutely.
What is it that I mean, it's very entertaining to read this stuff, but you are diving in.
I've always thought of organized crime not as some fringe aspect of American culture, but as the main vein of American culture.
Yeah.
And if you research it that way and you look at it that way, you learn a lot about America, politics, sociology. Yeah. It really is an interesting prism or angle to look at. I call it from the gutter. It's looking at America from the point of view of the gutter.
Yeah.
And you learn so much about it. It's an inexhaustible topic to me. I can go back in history and tell stories. I can do contemporary versions of it.
I can't walk around Manhattan anymore because when Willie Falcon was hiding, he had to hide from the federal government. He did it here in New York.
He's on the lam.
He's on the lam. He didn't want to stay home where I think his wife was. Where were they living? Upper East Side or something?
Upper West Side.
Upper West Side.
Along the park.
So his work partner would pick him up in a van.
Yeah.
And he would have this CB radio, and they would drive him around Manhattan. He would talk to Escobar on the CB radio, organizing. So every time I see a van out there, I'm going, that's cocaine smuggling happening right now.
You might be onto something there.
Right.
A mobile headquarters where he was consummating international cocaine deals from the back of the van.
They were doing encrypted messaging.
They really. I mean, I'm telling you, if you bend your mind around what it is they had to do to create this operation, it's pretty extraordinary.
There's a speedboat on the cover here because they also were
powerboat racing champions.
I mean, it's like, but also if you're doing coke, you want to go fast. So
that's true.
If they became powerboat champions and they were high on marijuana, that'd be different.
Now,
you were only going 3 miles an hour, Willie Falcon.
If they were high on marijuana, they'd be doing their powerboat racing in the bathtub.
Yeah. I hate to say this because it romanticizes them, but it does seem like they were winners, or at least they went big. Now, everyone should know it ends poorly. It ends very, very poorly. And there's also a part of me that gets so mad at all the rules they broke.
Yeah.
You know, that's not fair.
Yeah.
You can't buy a sheriff.
Fixing the jury.
They fixed, I mean, that blew me away. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, they finally go to trial, a big federal racketeering trial, and they're so popular in South Florida that they not only fix the jury, they fix 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jurors out of 12.
Yeah.
They buy off to give them a not guilty verdict, and they're found not guilty. It was a shock to everybody.
Right.
They own the system. They were like Robin Hoods in South Florida. They were revered by many Cuban Americans because they funneled money back into the community. They built baseball parks and they spread the money around. They were very popular.
Some of the more powerful moments in the book are when they're faced with those decisions through their families.
Yes.
Their parents who came over in dangerous situations and almost act now embarrassed of their children.
That's very poignant. It was very poignant to me because, you know, their parents were kicked out of Cuba. Some of them had been professionals and they lost everything. And they wound up in South Florida with nothing.
Yeah.
And here's the kids, 11, 12, 13, are looking at their parents. They grow up watching their parents suffer.
Yeah.
I think what was driving a lot of this cocaine generation was to succeed and to make their parents proud.
Yeah.
Ironically, that was their goal, you know, to show that they could make it in America in a way that would make their parents proud. And it was the parents that came to them, knew they were in the cocaine business, and came to them and said, son, you got to get out. You got to get out of this business.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well.
And that's easy. It's easy to cheat. It's hard to do it the right way.
No, it's hard to cheat, too.
It's hard to cheat, too. Okay. And that's the lesson. I want to ask you this. This is your 10th book.
Yes.
For any young writer, author out there, advice for anyone who wants to write. I don't even know if these kids read books anymore, but there is a kid out there that wants to write books. What would you say to him or her at this point?
Write every day.
Okay.
Write something every day.
Okay.
And get out into the world because writing is basically transforming your experiences into the written word down on the page. And so get out. If you're a kid who's in school, get away from school. And I don't mean drop out. I don't mean drop out, but I mean there's a reality other than school.
Right.
And that's the reality you got to learn. Let go of the side of the pool and push yourself out into the deep end.
I love that.
That's how you become a writer.
Well, you write wonderfully. My family was happy when I finished this book because they were talking to me and I'm going like, sex in prison, what the hell? It's cocaine. But it's a great book. Thank you for coming and talking with us today. The Last Kilo is available now. TJ Ingram.